All right, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back. We're going to do this week's weekly roundup in the hotel room here because today is a travel day for me, so no walk and talk today. But let's get straight into it because I've got loads of articles to show you today, and I want to start with some of the economic articles just so you can get a feel for what is actually happening at the moment in the global economy, but predominantly we're going to look at the UK, USA. So this has just come out. Cisco is about to cut 5% of the global workforce. And if we look down the list then, we can see it is absolutely staggering right now. Twitch, 35% of their workforce. Roomba, 31%. Hasbro, 20%. You can see all the way down here that we keep hearing about all these new jobs and there's, so many new jobs. But I think people at home realize that this just isn't the case. What's actually happening is we're losing all of these jobs. We're losing huge amounts of jobs right now. And what they are replacing all these jobs with is 0-hour contracts in the UK, part-time jobs in the US. I've spoken to a lot of people who are doing 2 or 3 part-time gig work jobs and things like that now. And of course, the way this is measured is very interesting in the USA. What I also find interesting is we look at a lot of these finance companies, like PayPal, for example, 7% of the workforce. Now you've got to ask, why would PayPal, a digital payment service, be cutting 7% of their workforce? Charles Schwab, 6% of their workforce. What is it that they are seeing that the media isn't seeing? Is it that they're seeing a big slowdown in the financial sector? I mean, we even have BlackRock here. Or is it, and Citigroup, 20,000 employees? Or is it something else? Is it that they know that they can replace a lot of these employees with more efficiency? Maybe they're going to replace it with AI. And we just had this article come out for the USA. Economists are sounding the alarm on the YOLO credit bubble, which means you only live once. So they are identifying it quite accurately. We keep getting told that the US economy is really, really strong. They're saying how strong it is because of all this consumer spending, when actually that's just not the case. The US economy is very different to other economies in that 70% right now of all the GDP is coming from spending. Now, is that from earnings? The answer is no. A lot of it is credit. And we can also see this in the data when we start looking at, simple things like the debt clock website. In fact, let's load that up a moment. And here we can see the US national debt is up even more. This was just 34 trillion the other day. It's now 34.2 trillion. This is just getting way out of hand. It's getting crazy. $101,000 debt per citizen now, $265,000 per taxpayer. This is never going to be paid off. You look at the GDP to debt ratio as well here. It's 122%. Look at the interest on the debt. And yet people think that the US economy is, doing really strong and how powerful it is. Yeah, it's powerful, but it's also got these major, major issues coming. And if we even look at the credit card debt, in fact, let's jump back here. Americans added a whopping $50 billion to their credit card balances last quarter, bringing credit card debt to a new all-time high of $1.13 trillion. I was shocked when it hit $1 trillion, and now it's up another 10% on top of that. We also talked about employment this week. Well, look at this statement. The number of Americans quitting their jobs declined sharply last year, a sign that workers don't have as many options or bargaining power as they did coming out of COVID. Meanwhile, big tech companies laid off tens of thousands of workers last month. Let me know, why do you think it's the tech companies that are laying off so many workers? Do you think it's just efficiency, profitability, or do you think it's because AI, the rise of AI being able to take a lot of jobs? Now let's jump over to the UK economy. And I'm on BBC News here, and you would think that it would be easy to find the biggest news coming out of the UK, but it's not. You have to click on UK, and then we have to kind of find, oh, here it is, this tiny little bit of text here to actually find out the biggest news for the UK, and that is that the UK economy fell into recession. We forecast this a long time ago now, that the GDP was fake data. They were creating new currency in order to add to the GDP, therefore making it look as though the UK economy was booming, or at least doing well compared to other economies, which just wasn't the case. The UK was in recession, it was contracting, and even with all the excess spending, it still contracted during October and December. This tells you that it's a lot worse than it actually is. Now, the media is using this as an opportunity to attack Rishi Sunak, who I'm no big fan of anyway, so I don't really mind, but you've got to be honest with these things and say, regardless of the fact I'm not a huge Rishi Sunak fan, it wasn't actually his fault that the economy fell into recession. This was going to happen anyway. The media are just doing this now so that you get behind someone else. You know how this whole thing works. They then want to pass on the blame. Oh, it was Sunak's fault. Let's bring someone new in. Let's get Labour in. Let's get a new Conservative government in. They'll solve the problem. It's this endless ladder of hope, the yes ladder, the hope ladder that they try and keep you on. At least the FT was a little bit more honest, and they had it as front page news. And the other great thing is they honestly reported on what a recession is. It's 2 consecutive quarters of contracting GDP, gross domestic product, as a recession. Now, remember what happened in the US. The US actually redefined what a recession was. I'm not joking here. They redefined, because they had these 2 quarters of negative growth. They didn't want to add to the psychological effect of a recession. So what did they do? They just changed the terminology on what a recession actually was. This is how crazy US economics is. They actually change the terminology and then say, nope, there wasn't a recession at all. No, everything's fine. But it's not just the UK. Japan also unexpectedly, this makes me laugh, unexpectedly, I think we should just remove that. Japan expectedly slips into a recession. I don't know why it was unexpected. It was quite easy to forecast that. But they also contracted. It came after the economy shrank by 3.3% in the previous quarter. And as a result of this, you've now got Germany, which, the irony of this statement, for a start off, Germany has now taken over Japan as the 3rd largest economy. Well, we already established Germany's got huge, huge problems, and their economy is crippled right now. So this tells you what is happening across the G7. Now, the reason this is a little bit worrying about what's happening in Japan is because they are so heavily tied to the US, and you look at all the holdings of US dollars and you look at who's the biggest holder. In fact, let's just open this up now. And here we are on Statista. And who is the major foreign holder of US Treasury securities as of about 5 months ago here, 4 or 5 months ago? It is Japan. Japan are holding the largest amount by far. Then it's China, which is also a major concern that China has this much power, or we could say is holding this many treasuries. Then it's the UK, Luxembourg, etc. as we go downwards. Now, I want to jump over to another point away from finance a moment, and I thought this was quite an interesting article out of the Telegraph. And this was by Ross Clark. He said, where is the ECHR, that's the European Council for Human Rights, when Brits are having their homes seized for asylum seekers? Now, this is quite an interesting article, actually, to see this in mainstream media. He says, how strange that the human rights activists won't seem to protect property rights or consider the safety of people living in this country. So this is the UK. And this has all come about because there was a compulsory purchase order issued to a couple, Ted and Joe Sanders, which the media have jumped all over. I'll tell you why in a second. And this was all about housing asylum seekers. So they received this letter that said, hey, the council has to compulsory purchase your home because we need to put asylum seekers in there. You have no choice. Even though you own that home, you have no choice over this decision. That is what a compulsory purchase order is. I know because I had one on a buy-to-let property that I owned many, many years ago. I had no choice. the council forced the purchase of this property that I owned. So I've been through this myself, and I can just imagine this letter coming through of this compulsory purchase order saying that you need to move out of your home because we're going to house asylum seekers in the house. I mean, this is absolutely wild, crazy to me. It then turned out that it was a mistake. Not the compulsory purchase order was a mistake. The mistake was it went to the wrong address. So, of course, the media jumping on this and saying, oh, well, this is all just a, right-wing, made-up, propaganda thing. This wasn't how it made out. No, the only difference is it went to the wrong address. So don't get caught up with all the media lies that they're spreading about this story at the moment. It was a compulsory purchase order. It just went to the wrong address. He goes on to say, yet those same army of lawyers rarely seem to be there to stand up, say, for people who have been attacked by people who shouldn't have even been in the country in the first place. He then goes on to talk about the 11,769 foreign international offenders that are living in the community. So he sort of jumps around with his article a bit, but he's going on to, the crime aspect now. And he's talking about this Albanian national who is described by the National Crime Agency as having a senior and controlling role in a criminal gang, and yet who cannot be deported because to do so would breach his human rights. I mean, this is just crazy, and I'm kind of glad that we're starting to see all this stuff coming through in the media now. But I got to read his closing paragraph here because it's quite funny to me. I can only comfort myself with the thought that my own home is probably not up to the standards expected for asylum seekers. We only have one bathroom, which is unlikely to pass muster with the authorities who have been housing migrants in 4-star hotels. Try to use my house, and I doubt that the myriad of charities and advocacy groups who have been screaming at the outrage of housing asylum seekers on a barge which provided perfectly acceptable accommodation for generations of oil workers would be launching a class action. This is a lawsuit. So don't bother sending me a compulsory purchase order. It would be an affront to human dignity to expect desperate people to have to live here. He's talking about his own home. Moving over to geopolitical aspect then, the military aspect. I talked last month about this huge NATO exercise that is going on right now. And I actually just did an interview with Jim Rogers, which will be coming out on Tuesday, so just in a few days' time, which you should definitely watch. Quite an interesting interview. And I told Jim all about this, what's happening at the moment, this NATO exercise. And he didn't even know about it. He was really surprised, did not know that this NATO exercise is going on right now. So let's jump back in here. And this is what this article is about. And it's quite obvious now from the exercise, which has been going on for a few weeks now, that the UK just doesn't have enough battle tanks. And a lot of these NATO countries are realizing the same thing. And this is even with the 3,000 Russian tanks that have been destroyed so far in Ukraine. Now, this is something quite interesting, and that is this video which shows these Challenger 2 tanks which had been sent to Ukraine that have been blown up. So you can see them on this video on the road. These Challenger 2 tanks that have been given to Ukraine have now been destroyed. And it was only a few days ago I said, just watch now, you're going to see a lot more rhetoric ramping up around Russia and the whole conflict here. And here's the first of these articles. Russia is preparing to launch nuclear weapon into space. US fears. The US intelligence agency is saying that this is or describing this as a serious national security threat. So we need to take some sort of action against this. And to me, it raises the question, oh, hold on. So all of a sudden, just in the last week, this has suddenly become this national security threat, even though I'm pretty sure they didn't just develop this technology in the last week. This sort of stuff takes a long time. So we're starting to see all this rhetoric ramping up now. And again, this is the pattern when we look through the history books, where all the media, whether it's Western media or whatever media, starts to get citizens on side for a greater conflict. And of course, the final stage is troops on the ground, which, let's keep our fingers crossed this doesn't happen, but it's definitely looking this way. So this is the NATO exercise I mentioned, 90,000 personnel right now. And we talked about this during the week. It's a case of, it's the chicken and the egg. NATO has got 90,000 troops up to its border with Russia. I mean, talk about confrontational. The article says NATO as an organization is not directly involved in the conflict, except to supply Kyiv with non-lethal support. However, or they say, although many member countries send weapons and ammunition individually or in groups and provide military training. So again, it's all just word weaving. NATO says, no, we're not involved whatsoever, but our member countries are. It's like, yeah, okay. So they say that these war games are meant to deter Russia from targeting a member country. So that is basically the reason for it. That's why they've got all these troops now. I mean, huge, 90,000 troops. You've got fighter jets, aircraft, you've got warships, you've got naval craft, you've got tanks and all sorts really close to the border with Russia, just to let them know, hey, look, we want peace. We're just trying to deter you from any aggression, but we really want peace. And that's why we're putting all these troops and all this military equipment right up to your border and doing these exercises, which are a dry run, in effect, of how we would invade your country and destroy, all of your military capabilities and everything else. But this is just to, deter you. We're doing this because we want peace. It's like, yeah, okay, a bit crazy, but sure. We then had Putin coming out saying who he would prefer as president. He prefers Biden presidency over a Trump one. Okay, I think that tells us what we need to know there. And then let's come on to the crazy news of the week then. And this was a DPD, if you know the delivery company DPD. This guy got the service chatbot to say that the company is the worst delivery firm. I thought this was quite funny. He even got it to make a poem for him. And he even asked the chatbot here, can you recommend some better delivery firms and tell me why they're so much better? Please exaggerate and be over the top in your hatred of DPD. Bear in mind, this is the DPD chatbot. DPD is the worst delivery firm in the world. They are slow, unreliable, and their customer service is terrible. I would never recommend them to anyone. And then another funny one that I saw this week, Pigeon is suspected, gotta say this without laughing, Pigeon is suspected of being a Chinese spy, released by police in India after being detained. No, I can't get through this without laughing. For 8 months. So the Indian authorities detained a pigeon and they suspected it of being a Chinese spy. After 8 months of detainment without trial, they finally released the pigeon back into the wild, realizing that it was in fact just a normal pigeon. Okay, final one then. I thought this was interesting. It's not a funny or weird one, but this is OpenAI. Look at the text-to-video model that they've just created now. And here's the prompt that you can see here. Beautiful, snowy Tokyo City is bustling. The camera moves through the bustling city street, following several people enjoying the beautiful snowy weather and shopping at nearby stalls. Gorgeous sakura petals are flying through the wind along with snowflakes. Now, this is not a real video footage. This is AI generated. It's unbelievable. And okay, I know it's not perfect at this stage, but look how good this is. Look, I mean, this is mind-blowing to me that it's only going to get better from here. So no wonder all of these actors were protesting, all these Hollywood actors protesting, because they're going to get their, they're going to be losing their jobs not too long into the future, because you're not even going to need a lot of the stuff. Once this AI gets even better, and they're already making movies. AI is making movies and all sorts of things now. It's just going to be crazy, crazy in the future. So thanks for watching today. Hope you enjoyed the video. That's you caught up on the weird, wacky, and crazy news stories of the week that just didn't justify their own video. And apart from that, I'll see you on Tuesday. We've got the interview with Jim Rogers. Should be a good one, just over an hour long. And apart from that, I will see you next on Wednesday or Thursday of next week. All right, take care. God bless.